Nikita, eat your breakfast.
What do we have for breakfast?
Take a look yourself. It is the most delicious thing in the world. You will definitely like it.
Oh no, not corn again. We are so poor. I hate this corn. I will never eat this corn in all my life.
Come on, 1 spoon for mommy. 1 spoon for Stalin. 1 spoon for USSR. Oh, you silly little Nikita Khrushchev, you will love this corn when you grow up.
As promised, here's Khrushchev biography. Nikita Sergeyevich was born in 1894 in the Kursk region to a family of farmers. Khrushchev himself recalled the first milestones of his working life. I started working as soon as I could walk. Until I was 15, I herded calves, sheep, and then cows for a landowner. Then I worked in a German-owned factory, then a French-owned mines. I worked in Belgian-owned chemical plants, and now I am the Prime Minister of the Soviet Union. Already a convinced communist, he fought in the Russian Civil War. He would have been some minor manager, but in 1929 he entered the Industrial Academy in Moscow, where he met one of its students, Nadezhda Alliluyeva, Stalin's wife. In 1930, at the initiative of Lazar Kaganovich, first secretary of the Moscow City Bolshevik Committee, he was elected secretary of the party committee, and in accordance with current political guidelines, carried out the party purge at the academy. And purges would become his strong point in 1930s. Thanks to an uncompromising attitude toward the so-called enemies of the party, Khrushchev quickly became the leader first of Moscow and then of all of Ukraine. Between 1936 and 1940, 200,000 people were repressed under his signatures. During World War II, he became a member of military councils on several fronts. Here are General Ivanov's recollection of his activities. A colorful figure was Nikita Sergeyevich Khrushchev, a member of the front's military council. This short, plump man, with a simple smile, always remained, so to speak, a stabilizer of the situation within the circle of military leaders who led the troops in the Battle of Stalingrad. The situation was tense, everyone worked literally to the point of exhaustion, so nervous breakdowns often occurred, and relationships became strained. Nikita Sergeyevich, it seems, anticipated the emergence of such moments and immediately found the right tone, calming the conflicting parties. After all, back then he had two essentially equal headquarters under one commander, and some of the workers had quite a bit of ambitions. If a dispute arose, a member of the military council would invite both parties to present their views in turn, and then say that he saw no fundamental differences between them, and very convincingly expressed a third, so to speak, synthesizing point of view with which everyone usually agreed. After the war, Khrushchev was responsible for the restoration of Ukraine. Thanks to his cunningness, Khrushchev, along with Stalin, Malenkov, Beria and Bulganin, joined the Five, a small bureau of the Central Committee Presidium created at Stalin's suggestion that concentrated all power. After Stalin's death in March 1953, Lavrenti Beria became a Minister of Internal Affairs and Deputy Chairman of the Council of Ministers, quickly concentrated enormous power in his hands. He controlled the state security agencies, the army, the police, and actively interfered in government affairs. Khrushchev and other members on the Central Committee Presidium feared that Beria was plotting a seizure of sole power and began to act against him. In the summer of 1953, Khrushchev organized a conspiracy within the top leadership. He secured the support of Marshal Zhukov and Konev and several members of the Presidium, Malenkov, Bulganin and Molotov. On June 26, 1953, during a Presidium meeting, Khrushchev accused Beria of espionage, nationalism and abuse of power. Following the prearranged plan, Marshal Zhukov and his officers arrested Beria right at the meeting room. He was soon convinced of treason and executed. This action strengthened Khrushchev's position and became a decisive step toward his leadership at the party. Let's move on to the most interesting part, the reign of Nikita Sergeyevich Khrushchev. Let's divide it into three categories: successes, failures, and average results. Let's start with the successes. Housing. The USSR was in a dire situation at the time. Most people living in cities didn't even have their own apartments. Everyone except the party elite lived in a communal apartments, usually with just one room per family. Khrushchev believed that improving living conditions for the people was the most important task of socialism and set the goal of giving every Soviet family a separate apartment. In 1957, a large-scale housing construction plan was adopted, calling for a transition to industrial methods, assembling houses from reinforced concrete panels. This is how the famous Khrushchevka emerged. Five-story building without elevators, simple in layout but inexpensive and quick to erect. Thanks to this, more than 50 million people received their own housing for the first time. Space. After Stalin's death, Khrushchev actively supervised the project of Sergei Korolev, the chief designer of rocket and space technology. He saw space not only as a means of scientific progress, but also as a powerful tool for political propaganda. In 1957, the world's first artificial satellite was launched, and in 1961, the first manned space flight took place. Yuri Gagarin became a hero of global significance. Khrushchev personally congratulated Gagarin, received him in the Kremlin, and used him as the president of the USSR International. There was also a lunar program, but Brezhnev curtailed it. De-Stalinization and cultural thaw. Nikita Sergeyevich Khrushchev was the main initiator of change. He condemned Stalin's personality cult at the 20th Congress of the Bolsheviks in 1956. The rehabilitation of victims of repression began. Hundreds of thousands returned from the camps and many were rehabilitated post-mortem. The role of state security agencies was greatly diminished and oversight of the law was strengthened. Stalin was removed from Lenin's mausoleum and buried on the Kremlin wall. This did not please the former Stalin circle, Malenkov, Molotov and Kaganovich. This anti-party group attempted to remove Khrushchev from his post as a head of the USSR, but they failed. All those removed resigned. Although our rejection of the cult of Stalinism led to our loss of friendship with China and Albania, in my opinion, this process was necessary for Soviet society. A period of freedom and symbolism dawned in culture and science. Work about human destinies and wars without idealization appeared. Debatable art developed and forms of communication expanded. Young people were inspired by new ideas and optimism reigned in society. At the same time, Khrushchev had his own views on art. This became clear during an exhibition at the Manege in 1962, when Nikita Sergeyevich harshly criticized avant-garde artists, calling their work scribbled and their creators parasites and guys, don't forget to subscribe, leave a like, you will make me happy. Yay! This attack was particularly directed at the Ernst Неизвестный, an artist. Which is ironic since after Khrushchev's death, it was he, Ernst Неизвестный, who erected a monument on the grave of the former head of the USSR. Average results. Foreign policy. On the one hand, Khrushchev advocated the peaceful coexistence of two systems, capitalism and communism. He wanted to reduce international tensions, and to that end, he even traveled to the United States in 1959. This trip gave us many memes, and I'll share a couple of them to you. Khrushchev once, without realizing it, became the face of Pepsi-Cola advertising. At a meeting with Richard Nixon in 1959, the drink was being served. Nixon offered Nikita Sergeyevich a taste of two Pepsi varieties. One was made with water from the Soviet Union, and the other with the American water. And, not without mischief, Richard asked Nikita to judge which was better. Khrushchev tried both varieties and naturally declared the drink made with Soviet water much tastier. In reality, Nixon was being cunning. Both drinks were made from the same water, but the photo of Khrushchev drinking Pepsi went viral and clearly boosted the company's profits. The second one. On June 24, 1959, Khrushchev told US Vice President Richard Nixon, "We have means at our disposal that will have grave consequences for you. We show you Kuzькina мать." The interpreter, confused, translated the phrase literally. "We'll show you Kuzma's mother." The Americans were stunned. What is this? A new weapon? even more formidable than nuclear missiles? Kuzma's mother, or Kushkina mать, is a Russian expression, proverb, meaning the threat of punishment or reprisal. And the last meme in this section is the boot. The event took place in October 60 at the meeting of the UN General Assembly in New York. Khrushchev, who led a Soviet delegation, reacted sharply to a speech by a representative of the Philippines, who accused the USSR of enslaving the peoples of Eastern Europe. An enraged Khrushchev began loudly interrupting the speaker, pounding his fist on the table, and then, according to eyewitnesses, taking off his shoe and banging it on the podium in protest. In terms of foreign policy in general, little good came out of it. A rift within the communist bloc over de-Stalinization, the Berlin blockade and the construction of the Berlin Wall, a supposed attempt at peaceful coexistence between the US and the USSR, but in 1962 the Cuban Missile Crisis and the world on the brink of the nuclear war. Not good, not terrible. And failures. There will be two of them, and the first one is agriculture. After visiting the United States in 1959, Khrushchev was struck by the level of American agriculture, especially the abundance of corn, which was used not only as a food product, but also as a base of producing feed, biofuels and plastics. Inspired by this, he decided to introduce corn throughout the USSR, considering it the queen of the fields as the key to solving the food problem. Slogans like "a cornfield for every collective farm" began to appear. Corn was planted from the far north to the arid steppes of southern Russia, and Trofim Lysenko, the chief agronomist, was responsible for this task. Well, you understand what I'm getting at. Corn only took root in Ukraine and Moldova, and a lot of people were pretty much starving in Khrushchev's era. The second failure wasn't as important for the country as it was for the Khrushchev himself. In 1964, a conspiracy was organized involving Brezhnev, Podgorny and Semichastny. While Khrushchev was vacationing in Abkhazia, this group managed to convince the Central Committee that Khrushchev should be removed from his post as the head of the USSR for his tyranny. And so it happened, Nikita Sergeyevich was dismissed in a single day. Khrushchev spent the rest of his life at his dacha, writing his memoirs, and he died in 1971.
On the Impossible Whopper, then I'm getting on the actual Whopper.
Omsk, Omsk, Omsk. And the man you've been waiting for, Dmitry K.T. Yazov. But first, Dmitry Karbyshev. Dmitry Mikhailovich Karbyshev was born in 1880 in Omsk to a family of hereditary Siberian Cossack nobles. Dmitry lost his father early in life and was raised by his ailing mother, which fostered his independence and intellectual curiosity. Thanks to his mother's education, he spoke several languages from childhood: Russian, Tatar, French, and German. Tragedy befell Dmitry as a child. His older brother, Vladimir, who had participated in the student revolutionary movement, was imprisoned and contracted tuberculosis. Vladimir died in early 1890s, and Dmitry himself adopted communist views. After graduating from university, he served in the engineering corps in the Far East, participating in the Russo-Japanese War and then in World War I. After the October Revolution, he defected to the Soviet Union and became one of the founders of the Soviet military engineering. He designed fortifications, bridges, and defensive systems, taught at the Military Engineering Academy of the Red Army, and wrote dozens of scientific papers on fortification. By the late 30s, Dmitry Karbyshev was already considered one of the most prominent experts in military engineering, not only in the Soviet Union but also internationally. With the outbreak of the Great Patriotic War, Karbyshev was stationed on the Western Front. In the summer of 1941, while breaking out of the encirclement, he was seriously wounded and captured by the Germans. Despite offers to defect to the Germans, he categorically refused to collaborate with the enemy. From 1941 to 1943, the Germans considered Karbyshev as the head of the ROA, but Dmitry remained adamant. He was transferred to Mauthausen concentration camp, where he died on February 18, 1945. He and other prisoners were doused with the cold water in the freezing temperatures and beaten with truncheons. Dmitry K.T. Yazov. He was born on November 8, 1924, in the village of Yazovo, in the Omsk governorate, to a family of farmers. He volunteered for the Red Army in November 1941, at the age of 17, before finishing high school. When he joined the army, he added a year to his age. This was a common practice for high school students at the time. Everyone wanted to conscript. He fought on the Leningrad and Second Baltic fronts, participating in lifting the siege of Leningrad and liberating the Baltic states. After the war, he finally finished school, entered officer training and rose to the rank of colonel. Interesting fact: during the Cuban Missile Crisis, Yazov's 400th Motorized Rifle Regiment was secretly transferred to Cuba and remained there from September 62 to October 63, ready to repel the US invasion of the island. After that, he basically rose the ranks to become a general. In May 1987, following the dismissal of Sergei Skolov, Dmitry Yazov was appointed Minister of Defense of the USSR, the last person to hold this post in Soviet history. He actively participated in the military reforms of the late 80s, oversaw the withdrawal of Soviet troops from Afghanistan, and supported Mikhail Gorbachev's policies, although he maintained a cautious approach to democratic reforms. This attitude, to put it mildly, was already present in 1991. In August, Yazov joined the State Emergency Committee (GKChP), which attempted to halt the collapse of the USSR. He ordered the deployment of troops to Moscow, but soon realizing the futility of such actions, ordered the troops to return to their barracks. After the failure of the State Emergency Committee, Yazov was arrested and spent about a year in Matrosskaya Tishina, pre-trial detention center. In 1994, he was amnestied by a decision of the Russian State Duma. In short, he and his loyal communists wanted to turn everything back and restore the USSR of the Brezhnev's era, but Yeltsin and his friends prevented it. After his release, Yazov continued his public activities. He worked in the Russian Ministry of Defense, served as an advisor to the minister, participated in veterans organizations, and wrote memoirs. In 1991, he was awarded the title of Marshal of the Soviet Union, the last in the history. He died on February 25, 2020, in Moscow at the age of 95. We're gonna place Omsk in A tier. Thank you guys for watching this video. I think the next one will be about the killing of the royal family of the Romanovs. So stay tuned. I love you. You love me. Goodbye.